during
Actually,
cancel culture.
instead of watching this, let's watch this because I need to. So we've just had some local elections in the UK, along with a by-election for Hartlepool, and Labour are just getting fucking crushed. So let's see what TLDR News has to say about it. Yeah, we could fly invisible candy, but dragons can see through invisibility, so wouldn't necessarily help.
Hello and welcome to another TLDR UK video. We've been speaking about May 6th and the elections happening across the UK a lot recently.
Corbyn was outed a while ago.
Now the election's over, let's take a look at the results and the fallout of the election. Now, at the time of writing, not all of the results are in for all of the elections, so we'll be focusing on England's local elections with a specific focus on Hartlepool's by-election. We'll be discussing the Scottish parliamentary election in another video, so subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when that video's out. Also, we're really close to 500,000 subs, so we just appreciate your support. As I mentioned, on Thursday, the UK held
This is a great channel, by the way.
There were Welsh and Scottish Assembly elections, English local council elections, mayoral elections, police and crime commissioner elections, and a by-election.
That's a good point. Let me just check. Alright, good. Andy Burnham did win. That's good.
Of Hartlepool, which is the one we're going to focus on here. The by-election was triggered after Mike Hill, the incumbent Labour MP, resigned in March over sexual harassment allegations. In 2019...
Well, I didn't realise that that's why the by-election was happening. Maybe it's not so surprising that Labour got trounced there.
Hill won with 38% of the vote, the Conservatives came second with 29, and the Brexit Party came third with 26. However, in this election, the Conservatives won with 52% of the vote, with Labour coming in second with 29%, and Samantha Lee, an independent, came in third with 10% of the vote. This is clearly a really bad result for Labour, and at least a pretty good one.
The problem with UK politics is the right wing is literally all held by the Conservatives, whereas the left wing is fractured between Labour, the Greens, the Lib Dems, who are, I mean, the Greens and the Lib Dems they're not massive parties, but they're large enough to eat this vote. Now, it looks like in Hartlepool, the Conservatives got over 50% on their own, so it wouldn't have made a difference, but it would have been a lot closer if all of this was still Labour.
One for the Conservatives. But it's hard to overstate quite how bad this is for Labour, because the Conservatives won by a...
Any hot takes about Scottish independence? My thoughts on it is that I would rather Scotland not leave the UK. But at the same time, I don't blame them for wanting to. And I do think it's probably fair that they should be able to do it if that's what the majority of Scottish people want. The thing with Scotland and why they want to leave is because, I mean, mainly the main argument is that Scotland voted overwhelmingly to remain in Europe, and Scotland is overwhelmingly left-wing. Yet, for the last decade plus, but in reality for the last 50 years, apart from Tony Blair's Labour Party, they've pretty much always been governed by a Conservative party based in Westminster. So I can't blame them for wanting to leave, to be honest. I'd rather they didn't, but I think it's not very fair to stop them if that's what they want. But I was reading in the news today that Nicola Sturgeon, who is the leader of the Scottish Nationalist Party, who are the biggest party in the Scottish Parliament, technically she can't hold a referendum unless the Westminster government allow her to. So Boris Johnson would have to allow her to hold this referendum, which he's already said that he won't do. But she was saying that she's just going to pass legislation in the Scottish Parliament allowing her to do so. And it will be up to this, it will then come down to a battle in the Supreme Court about whether Scotland has the right to do that or not, which is quite interesting. So I think the last few votes in the Scottish elections that happened a couple of days ago are happening right now to see who's won. But if it's true that the SNP retain a majority in the Scottish Parliament, and she does write this legislation into law in Scotland, about there being the option for another referendum on Scottish independence, then I don't know what will happen if that goes to the Supreme Court. I imagine that the Supreme Court will probably side with the UK, the British government, but we'll see.
23-point margin as a governing party in a by-election. We mention this because historically incumbent parties don't do well in by-elections. To put this in context, the largest incumbent swing in a by-election before this was a 12% swing in 1945, and this was nearly double that at 23%. So why did Labour do so badly, and why did the Conservatives do so well?
I think the thing, I don't know how it happens, because, like, Boris is just such a fucking, like, liar, right? Number one, the guy's a massive liar. He lies about everything, right? He doesn't seem competent at all. Like, he doesn't seem to know what he's talking about half the time. They keep fucking things up because they just make decisions on a whim and then have to, like, U-turn a few days later when the consequences of those decisions come out. And, like, he's associated with, like, you know, like, it's been in the news that he's been, like, asking for donors to pay for his, like, flat refurbishments. There's a load of the Conservative Party's, like, plagued with corruption scandals at the moment. Yet people just, like, keep voting for them. I just don't understand what it is about the Conservative Party that so many people like. And then contrasting that with, like, Labour, like, what's happened to Labour is that they had Corbyn in power for quite a while, and he was quite far left, and it's kind of alienated a lot of the, because there's like two elements to the left wing, right? There's the economic left, which is this idea of, you know, sort of socialism light. So these are policies that Labour had, such as, like, strengthening the unions, introducing, I think Corbyn had a policy, something that, like, for all firms with over 250 people, the workers of the firm should have a 10% ownership. They wanted to nationalize the railways, increase universal credit, which is like a benefit system payout, lots of things like this. So, like, left-wing economic policies. And then there's the left-wing social policies. So there's, like, the to use the right-wing's buzzword, like, identity politics. You know, there's trans issues, gay rights, feminism, things like this, right? These are kind of like the two elements of the left wing in general. Like, there's two sides to the left wing, and a lot of the northern constituencies in England, so your likes of places around Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, places like around there, traditionally Labour heartlands, you know, they've always voted Labour. Their traditional Labour vote comes from the fact that there was heavily unionized industries in those towns, so, like, coal miners, steel workers, things like this, you know, like factory workers, miners, etc., who had strong unions and have always voted left-wing, always voted Labour because they were the union party. But now Labour's gone, well, I think a lot of people feel like the Labour Party is now more about, like, young students and identity politics than it is necessarily about unions and left-wing economic policy. So, and the other thing which really crushed Labour in the last couple of elections is that a lot of these northern traditional Labour constituencies voted to leave the European Union, and Labour themselves were pro-Remain. So a lot of these constituencies feel, like, left behind by Labour, and they feel alienated by the identity politics stuff. You know, like, it's traditionally, like, it's people who worked in the mines, you know, like older guys, older women that don't really understand trans rights and etc. So they are now feeling conflicted voting for the Labour Party, and the Conservatives, they feel like maybe represent their views a little bit more because they're pro-Brexit and they're kind of a little bit a lighter touch on the identity politics side. So a lot of these places voted Conservative in the last election. And Labour see it as, okay, well, we went too far to the left. So they've ousted Jeremy Corbyn for Keir Starmer, who I like Keir Starmer. He was the former chief prosecutor for the British government. So he's like a top lawyer, highly like competent, well regarded. Definitely a lot closer to the centre. But what seems to have happened in these by-elections is that the places that voted Tory or Conservative at the last election, the more traditional, old school Labour voters, they still voted Conservative, but lots of the very far left, like university students, people that were big fans of Jeremy Corbyn, are now angry at the Labour Party for moving towards the centre, and then they've voted for the Greens, who are like the more traditional sort of far left party. So all that's happened is they've not gained any votes back from the centre, but they've just lost votes to the left, which is just like, they're just really fucked. I just don't see what Labour can do to win back those old school left-wing constituencies. Do you think Labour would benefit from becoming more moderate? Well, I mean, Wildbread, I kind of thought they would, but in this by-election and in the council elections, they have become more moderate and they've just been absolutely trounced. It's politics. The average person doesn't understand most of what the good politicians say anyway, so when you have a dumb politician talk and the average person understands everything he says, they like it. Yeah, Muller, sadly, you might be right about that. Compared to my president, he's better. Bolsonaro is actually stupid and he warned the reason he got stabbed in his gathering. Fucking hell, well, yeah, Bolsonaro's of the same ilk as Boris Johnson and Trump, in my opinion. You should write in the title and the announcements that you also talk about politics. I'm always very interested to your thoughts. Oh, well, thanks, Kaiser Fabian. I'm very interested in politics. But like, from the day of the leading up to the referendum, probably 6 months before the referendum, so early 2016, until the last election, which was 2019, Christmas 2019, I was obsessed with politics. I spent all day watching the news, reading about it, arguing about it, because I was so invested in the Brexit outcome. But now that it's like done and it's happened, and Boris has won this huge majority, and there's not really any hope of ousting him, I've kind of just like lost some interest. But you know, maybe I'll start getting back into it a little bit. My hot take is that this is still a Brexit issue. The traditional working man has been convinced that his interests are being met with Brexit. You're probably right, Dark Edge, but I cannot for the life of me understand how anyone could look at what's happened since Brexit and say that this is good for this country. I really don't understand. What we need is to get rid of first past the post, get rid of the two-party system, have proportional representation. It's the only way to have like a fair election outcome. I mean, fucking Tory, they're just constantly in power. They just do whatever the fuck they want. And it's like, I was thinking about, like, could you imagine, right? So we had the furlough scheme in the UK at the start of COVID, where basically the government was paying 80% of anyone's salary who couldn't work because their employer wasn't operating. So the government was piling like literally billions into people's pockets, paying their salaries for them. And quite rightly so, I think this was the right thing to do. It's a very popular policy in the country. But I think if Jeremy Corbyn had won the election in 2019, right? So if Diane Abbott was Home Secretary, now let me show you Diane Abbott, right? Because the Americans amongst you won't know who Diane Abbott is, okay? But this woman is universally fucking hated by all conservatives. They absolutely despise her. They think that she's stupid. She did like a radio interview once where she got some numbers mixed up, and it's been a fucking meme for years now that she's stupid and incompetent. Whereas on the very same day that she gave that interview, the serving chancellor at the time, the chancellor being the guy who manages the finances of the country, made a very similar mistake with numbers on the radio the exact same day that this happened to Diane Abbott, and it wasn't even mentioned in the paper, right? Because Philip Hammond, I mean, he's the fucking chancellor, so like he should know better than the shadow Home Secretary. But Philip Hammond looks like this, okay? This is a guy, oh yeah, he looks like a chancellor, right? Nobody's got a problem with him. No one would imagine that this guy is underqualified. But you go look at Diane Abbott, there's plenty of people who are willing to believe that she's not qualified. And, you know, I don't know if it needs to be stated, but I think the fact that she's black and a woman, to me, means, I'm not saying it's outright racism if you don't like Diane Abbott, but you've got to look at the way she's treated in the press compared to someone like Philip Hammond, basically for the exact same thing. You know, why is it that the media is all over someone like her, basically calling her thick and stupid and underqualified? Yeah, when you've got like old white men making the same mistakes that just gets brushed under the carpet. It really fucking pisses me off because plenty of people in my life will show me memes about Diane Abbott or make jokes about her. And like, the woman has achieved so much to be in the position that she's in. Like, when you think about like what she's had to face to get there. I don't know. I can't even remember what I was talking about. But let's go back and watch this video.
Well, let's start with some Hartlepool specific reasons and then try and work out the more widespread national trends. For starters, in Hartlepool, obviously the incumbent Labour MP was accused of sexual harassment, which isn't a good look for the Labour Party or the local party more specifically.
Can't argue with that.
Also, Paul Williams, the new Labour candidate, might not have been the best choice. He had previously been elected as MP to the neighbouring Stockton South constituency in 2017.
It's like, on this point, did Nico win the London election? No, surely Steve Carner's won, right? Still waiting for the result. It's pretty close. Conservatives have gained ground. Hopefully it's not enough for them to win the vote.
And as an MP, he was a Remainer who campaigned for...
Yeah, sorry. So I was listening to LBC the other day, and some guy was calling up saying that he'd read that Paul Williams here, who was the new MP that Labour were putting forward for Hartlepool, wanted to shut down the hospitals in Hartlepool, and that he was against the NHS. So that's why he's not voting for him. The guy's a fucking doctor. Like, there's absolutely no plans, from what I can tell, for the Labour Council in Hartlepool to impact the hospital at all. But this guy rang up, convinced that Paul Williams wanted to shut down the hospitals in Hartlepool, so he wasn't going to vote for him. He didn't even know he was a doctor. When the radio host was like, when James O'Brien was like, the man's a doctor, are you sure that that's what he wants to do? He's like, oh, I didn't know he was a doctor. Like, you've been sold a lie. You've read something that's completely and utterly untrue, and you've just based your vote completely on that.
Second referendum, before then losing his seat in 2019. Given that Hartlepool voted 70% Leave in 2016, fielding a Remainer candidate who just lost a nearby seat maybe wasn't a great idea. He also has an interesting social media history, with one person finding this tweet from him in 2011.
Fucking hell.
And on his first day as a Labour candidate, he put out a tweet with the word MILF apparently written out behind him in thumbtack.
What the fuck? This guy's just obsessed with MILFs. He's like 40 odd. Should he really be talking about MILFs? The problem is, because of Labour's conservative policies, now the lies are believable. They've lost credibility. I don't follow Fane 21 what you mean. Conservative policies. Yeah, you should be angry at the people who exploit the less mentally guarded people. Oh, 100% AO, yeah. You want to disdain for the con man, not for the conned.
The local Labour council was also dogged by bullying accusations and was seen as ineffective, in part because of cuts to local health services. Also, Labour might not have been helped by a strong showing from Samantha Lee,
James O'Brien,
an independent who won 10% of the vote. The final Hartlepool-specific reason that might partly explain Labour's poor results is that this election was the same day as the Tees Valley election. The current Tees Valley mayor is Conservative Ben Hutchin, and he's pretty popular. So there's a chance that Jill Mortimer, the Conservative candidate for Hartlepool, was helped by his supporters turning out and voting for her too. Anyway, those are some Hartlepool-specific reasons for this result, but the result could also possibly be symptomatic of some wider national trends. Normally, we wouldn't recommend drawing too many wider conclusions from a single by-election, because they're subject to so much local noise. But considering the Conservatives won with a 23-point lead as the incumbent party in a by-election, and alongside massive Labour losses in local councils, but it's probably big enough to think as statistically significant. A smaller lead could perhaps have been attributed to the Conservatives enjoying a vaccine bounce, thanks to the success of the UK's vaccine programme. But it also seems that the Conservatives have successfully monopolised the Brexit Party vote.
That's the main thing. The Brexit Party, yeah, he's going to talk about it now.
Together the Conservative and Brexit Party vote totals from 2019, you get 55%, which is almost exactly the same as what the Conservatives got this time round. Obviously, we can't know that all of the Conservatives' new votes came directly from the Brexit Party, but it seems safe to conclude that at least the majority of the Brexit Party voters would have gone Conservative. A Survation poll in Hartlepool last week, which actually overstated Labour's support, found that...
Let's change the stream title since we do politics for a little bit.
77% of Brexit Party voters went on to the Conservatives and only 5% to Labour. If this pattern holds nationally at the next general election, Labour are in big trouble. It's also worth noting that the Brexit Party to Conservative swing puts pretty big Labour MPs at risk of losing their seats, including Ed Miliband, Yvette Cooper and Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey.
Yeah.
To make things worse for Labour, some council results suggest they're also losing votes to the Lib Dems. Hendon in Sunderland, for example, saw a 30-point swing from Labour to the Lib Dems.
I mean, that is absolutely insane. 30-point swing to the Lib Dems. The thing is, Labour are just so fucked now. They're losing from both sides. They're losing votes to the left, to the Greens. They're losing votes to the centre, to the Lib Dems. And they're losing some votes to the Conservatives directly. Like, where do they go? They had Jeremy Corbyn, he was too left-wing. They've got Keir Starmer, he's too right-wing. Like, where do Labour go? Like, is the party actually just dead at this point? Thanks for the resub, Gorlock. I don't know if you've read the internal Labour manifesto documenting the right-wing attacks on Corbyn wing, but it's very insightful. Yeah, I did read that Feign 21. I mean, yeah, they were being attacked from inside their own party, which clearly didn't help. If a party has credibility, smears don't stick nearly as easily, at least among their base. Since the ousting of Corbyn, long-time working-class supporters are now more vulnerable to Conservative propaganda since their guy is being shivved by the party. Long-time working-class supporters, I don't think were necessarily fans of Corbyn, personally. Imagine if Green becomes the new Labour. I don't think it will, but it would be maybe based. I'm not sure. Okay, I think you have this shit with the Conservatives being in power for 10 years is because of your voting system, if I'm not mistaken. If we had the same, we would have a one party in power for 12 years now. Yeah, it's the first past the post. If we had proportional representation, it probably wouldn't be this bad. Because a lot of the times, the left-wing parties have a majority, but they're split, whereas the right-wing parties are united, and even though they've got less votes overall, they do still win. In Germany, the Greens are leading. Yeah, the Greens in Germany and some other European places are a lot stronger to begin with. Like, the Greens are very, very low voter base in the UK. I hate David Cameron and the fact he's allowed Brexit referendum to happen. The fucking mad thing is that a vote to leave was meant to be destroying the Conservative Party because it's like splitting them. But it's actually ended up destroying the Labour Party. That's the crazy thing about it. Don't forget that even if you need to make a coalition for the government, it keeps the crazies out from both sides. Yes, Candy, yeah.
Now, council elections are only tiny affairs, with only a few thousand voters, so it's probably not safe to draw any big conclusions, but it should still worry Labour. Ultimately then, what does this all mean? Well, at a minimum,
Yeah,
we
they
can
have gained a
infer
lot of
that so
councillors.
far Starmer's electoral pitch to Brexit voters has not worked. And there's limited evidence to suggest that he's also losing votes to smaller Liberal parties.
See, what I wonder now is the Brexit question so divisive that even now, even after it's over and Brexit's happened and the right wing has got its way, like, is it still now to the point where a person who supported Brexit could never vote for a politician that supported Remain, even now that it's done? The division is so strong and so hardwired that they just cannot vote for Remain. Even now, it's no longer an issue that needs to be brought up. I think that there's probably some truth to that, but to me, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, you've already won. Like, get over it.
Like the Lib Dems and the Greens.
Well, I'm bitterly disappointed in the results, and I take full responsibility for the results, and I will take full responsibility for fixing things. We have changed as a party, but we haven't set out a strong enough case to the country. Very often we've been talking to ourselves instead of to the country, and we've lost the trust of working people, particularly in places like Hartlepool. I intend to do whatever is necessary to fix that. And I intend not only to take responsibility for the results, but to take responsibility for fixing things. We've just had a bitterly disappointing set of results last night. This goes way beyond a reshuffle or personalities. It's about focusing the Labour Party on the country and making sure that we close the gap.
Starmer should be slam dunking over the pandemic like Corbyn should have slam dunked over Brexit.
And these results will have two obvious conclusions. More infighting in the Labour Party and more political capital for Boris Johnson. Because while you occasionally hear reports of Conservative MPs being unhappy with Boris Johnson, whether it's about lockdown, crony contracts or his flat redecoration, no Conservative MP is going to have a go at Johnson if he keeps winning elections. Because, well, he guarantees them a job. What do you think, though? Is it too soon to make a judgment about Starmer's Labour Party?
Smith's fanboy. I saw your message,
the results in your local area?
I need to keep highlighting
Be sure to let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video.
Wait, before we go back to the idea, I just want to see what Jonathan Pye's saying.
As the country goes to the polls. Well, certainly not the fucking Tories, that's for sure. I don't know. Labour, Green, are the Lib Dems still a thing? Vote for the guy with a fucking bin on his head. For all I care, spoil your paper, draw a cock, perfectly legal, just don't vote Tory. Don't vote for a bunch of entitled Etonians who have demonstrated time and again that they are in it for themselves, to make money and connections and take our taxes and hand it out to their rich mates, sucking the life out of the welfare system before leaving office and sitting on a corporate board lobbying your old Westminster chums. That's what they do. They are not here to make sure your bins are collected on time or to stick to their international obligations or make the cladding on the side of your building fireproof or ensure your grandmother is safe in a pandemic or ensure a high standard of education no matter your economic background. They are in it for themselves. Most of these morally bankrupt Tory arseholes would daily risk the sack if they were used car salesmen. A vote for the Tories is a vote for Boris Johnson, a man who thinks that repeatedly going is a valid answer to a question. A man without a moral compass, without conviction, although if you look at his charge sheet, he should have a string of them. A man willing to change his political beliefs in order to advance his political career, who is not interested in taking seriously the job that he coveted and stabbed so many in the back to get. A man who was busy picking out £850 a roll wallpaper instead of attending Cobra meetings, who doesn't fire cabinet members who have broken the ministerial code. A man whose dithering indecision on COVID cost us lives, thousands of them. Let the bodies pile up. Even if he didn't say it, it sounds like the sort of crass thing he would say. A man who's been fired twice for lying. That's the crux. That's the crux of it. He's a liar. He lies. His lies are no secret. A dirty, lying bastard. This is a referendum on Boris and his government. This is the midterms. It's time to give them a bloody nose. Give the Tories another reason to boot this prick out of number 10 and get someone else. Anyone else whose face I can fucking look at without a bit of sick coming up. Unless, of course, they replace Boris with Michael Gove, in which case, I don't know. Every household is going to have a collection of sick bags next to the sofa for every time his Punch and Judy on smack face pops up on the TV. Don't vote Tory.
Well said.
It can be hard to get excited about local elections, but outside of a general election, this is the most significant democratic process that the public...
Fucking love Jonathan Pye. Guy's a legend. Wait, we'll just watch one more. This is 7 minutes, so it might be a bit much.
Well, another extraordinary day of twists and turns here in Westminster. I'm here all day with all the Brexit latest, but before that, the sport and the weather. Jesus Christ, it's like an episode of Don't Tell the Bride. There's some complete fucking bellend running around 7 days before the big day, pissing his pants, not a fucking clue what he's doing, hasn't organised the car, the catering, the flowers. I thought I could come in on a jet ski. No. Are you sure about the jet ski? No. What about an aquatic personal watercraft? That's a fucking jet ski, Theresa. No one wants the jet ski. Shut up about the fucking jet ski. She's got one thing right, though. The UK
Theresa
has
May.
slid
Hey,
into a
remember
crisis,
that.
slowly and surely over 10 painful years. And who got us here? This lot. This gaggle of obdurate, arrogant, stubborn, unrepentant, heartless bunch of self-serving arseholes who have spent the last 3 years trying to keep their useless, irrelevant political parties together.
Oh, fuck me. Alright, look, back to D&D. Fucking hell. What a shit show.